Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. I want to thank you guys for all the support you have been given on the YouTube channel and whatnot. Means a lot. But today you've clicked on this video because we're going to be going over one of the many tier lists and rankings I like to do throughout the Bruins offseason. And I thought, I always do it as like a social media slash Instagram post. And I thought, why not have some fun with it and make it into a tier list? So, yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. So today, what we have for you, we are tier listing or ranking every single rivalry that the Boston Bruins have with every single NHL team. Like we're going to go through all 31 other teams and where I would rank the Bruins and their rivalry with that team. So, as you guys can see, I'm going to go to the full thing. We're on tier maker. So, we have a couple of tiers at the lowest. Don't really care. This just basically means like I don't really like as a Bruins fan for me, like I don't think about this team. Like I don't really have any sort of vendetta for them. The second tier, I was kind of debating where to put this one, but we'll put a few teams under recent cup final feuds, as in like, yeah, this team, we really had it out with them sort of thing. And I would just put them in that category. Like there's some real history there in like the NHL's, the biggest stage, the Stanley Cup final. Have their moments will go up, one more. That would be if I had to explain have their moments, that means, like, there have been here and there times where I can just, like, think back and be like, "Yeah, I did not like this team. I did not have a" like, there was a certain moment that just made me have a sour taste in my mouth towards them. Whether that be, like, a playoff loss or a certain moment that just really kind of you know, messed with the Bruins in the wrong way. So there's that. Fresh in the mind, will go up one. There are certainly some teams in the NHL that definitely, fit into this category, and we'll get into that for sure. That one's self-explanatory, without a doubt. Then we'll move up. Strong rivalries. These are the teams that I feel like definitely have history way before I was even born. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. And then yeah, the last one I don't even have to say anything. I think that kind of spoils everything. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So first team, we have the Anaheim Ducks. Uh I mean, don't really care. Like they're a pretty good trade partner with the Bruins. Like there's no real history that I can think of where I really disliked the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, honestly, I was kind of rooting for them this past playoff series with all the young talent they have. So yeah, I don't really care about them as a rival. Like I'm not too angry about them. So yeah, let's move on. Carolina. Carolina, there's definitely some bad blood. I would put them in um let's go fresh in the mind. I would say have their moments, but I think if we're going from 2020 to now, like Carolina would definitely be a team that's fresh in the mind. They claim Brandon Bussey off waivers, and he's got a Stanley Cup ring. That's somebody who you wish was a Bruin still, but I think there's that. You also have to think about the playoff series that we've had against them. There's definitely been some times where the Bruins have met the Hurricanes, and yeah, it is really annoying, especially recently, how the Hurricanes have kind of like beaten us. They also got Taylor Hall. That's not fun to watch when you're like, ugh, that guy's a former Bruin. It's not as much as other teams, but I definitely say Carolina's fresh in the mind. You could say have their moments if you want to go back to the Whalers, but um, yeah, I'm gonna just leave them there. Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. Where do we want you? Yeah, they're gonna go fresh in the mind. They're gonna go fresh in the mind, and that's only because of one thing. Because they beat us in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs this past year. Zach Benson is definitely one name to bring up that kind of helped this, but as a whole, it's just looking at this past playoff series. It definitely reignited some of that history that the Bruins have had with the Sabres. I could especially go back to like my early age in the 2010s There were definitely some clashes between the Bruins and the Sabres for sure. Most notably when a goaltender came out and got absolutely trucked. That was super fun to watch. Um, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. It is a very funny video from a Bruins perspective. So yeah, but considering this past Stanley Cup playoffs, the Sabres are fresh in the mind. They definitely would be uh, dictated within that category. Columbus, I don't really I don't really think about them. I don't know why it's not grabbing. I don't think about Columbus. They're not really a team that is they're in the Eastern Conference. Like I definitely could see why, but for me, Columbus is not a team that I genuinely consider one of those teams that I'm exactly like against. You know what I mean? I'm actually kind of rooting for them. If you thought of this past season and you were like, "Oh my god, the Blue Jackets are en route to being like, being over us in the Stanley Cup playoffs," like they almost had a wild card spot. Oh, wow, that lagged. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you had to take Columbus, I'd put them in don't really care. Like unless they kind of beat us in the wild card this year, which is definitely going to be something to look out for. I'd probably put them there, but yeah, I don't or I'd put them up. I don't really think too much about the Blue Jackets. Sorry, Columbus. Plus we owned them in 2019, which was a very fun series, to say the least. A very fun series. Calgary, it already was there, but I'm probably gonna put them there as again as well. I always like playing against Calgary. It's a great jersey matchup. I don't really think too much about them. So yeah, they're gonna go into don't really care. Chicago, Chicago, Chicago. I'm trying to sound like Frank Sinatra, but I don't want to do my song voice. Recent Cup final feuds, definitely in there. I definitely wanted to have a tier for this kind of thing. I could not stand the absolute dynasty that Chicago had built with Kane and Tays. And in 2013, I was ripped to shreds waking up the morning after game six, after the 17 seconds when the Bruins allowed those 2 goals, and I saw Kane and Tays and all of those players lift the cup. There's a lot of things you can think back on that series and just think, what if? The Bruins were such a wagon that year, and it just still hurts me that they didn't become the dynasty in 2013 after winning in 2011. Instead, it was Chicago. So I definitely put them in recent cup final feuds. If it wasn't for this tier, I definitely put them in like have their moments, but I wanted to have like one more just to sort of like separate. But Chicago's kind of they got Bedard, so they're more likable, but there's still that history of just like, oh my god, what if, man, what if? Dallas. I mean, I'd probably put Dallas and don't really care. I don't think too much about the Stars. They got a good roster now. The only thing historically that I could think of that really just puts a thorn in my side with them is actually, you know what? Have their moments. Could I put them in there? I don't know. Because the Tyler Sagan trade. I don't know. Like, I feel like the Bruins have never exactly gotten back at the Dallas Stars for the Tyler Sagan trade, and thinking back to what we got in return, I don't really care about them now, though. You know what I mean? I feel like that I do make a yearly post about remember when the Tyler Sagan trade happened? Like, sure, but I don't really blame them for trying to trade for a really good star player. I guess I don't really care about them. But I don't think I can name a moment where we really got our get back on the Stars. But I don't think about them too much. They're a fun team to watch. Oilers. They're not really recent considering the 80s are and 90s are a long time away, but they're definitely a team that whenever the Bruins play them, it's just like, oh, McDavid, Draisaitl, I want to get back at him. And even then, just thinking back, I'd probably put them in like cup final feuds because of all those times in the 80s and 90s. I bet especially for some of my some of my followers who are of an older generation. I mean, I can't gauge this because I haven't talked to anyone on this, but I would assume like looking at all those moments where Gretzky beat the Bruins, It's like, you probably wish you got one for Ray Bork, for that core group of guys. So I'd put the Oilers in the it's not exactly recent, but it's definitely a cup final feud that happened a few times that you wish the Bruins got one over Edmonton, that's for sure. So I'm gonna put them in there. I'm just gonna put them in there because historically the Bruins have a lot of Stanley Cup final losses, the most since like the expansion era or whatever. So and yeah, and you look at the history, you kind of wish they got one in that era. Moving on, Colorado. I don't really care about them. It's not they're a great team, fun team to watch. I can't think of anything that really makes me dislike the Colorado Avalanche. They have a really fun team, and year in and year out, they're always competing. They're very fast, and it's always fun to watch the Bruins play them. So, yeah, for sure. Um, I got nothing against the Avs. Let's move on. Detroit, strong. This is an original six rivalry. It goes way back. Nothing too much in terms of recency that I can think of between the Red Wings and the Bruins. But if you think of like a strong rivalry, there's definitely a lot of history between Boston and Detroit where you look at them and say, like, that's an original six matchup. There's intrigue every single time those two teams play. So I definitely dictate. It's not based off all of my like opinion. I think there's definitely some NHL history to tie here. The Red Wings are definitely one of those teams that the Bruins have played countless times, and there's definitely a lot of history between those two sides, dating way back before any of us were born. So I'm putting them in strong rivalries. You definitely have to do that for an original six team. Um, Moving on, the Kings. Yeah, unless we face them in a cup final during those early 2010s years, I really have no gripe with the LA Kings as a Bruins fan. Kopitar was always a favorite of mine growing up, and he's definitely one of those players that was one of the best defensive forwards of his time. Yeah, the Kings are cool. Like they got cool jerseys and whatnot. I can't think of anything that would make me be like, oh, the Kings. The Bruins do go to overtime a lot against the LA Kings. So yeah, those are always interesting, and most of the time they do beat us at TD Garden in overtime, which is frustrating, but it's not like it doesn't dictate as like a rival. It's just like, oh, that's a very good game. And the next team here, it's the same sort of thing. Minnesota, it's it's scrappy whenever the Bruins play the Wild because Bill Guerin likes to build his teams rough and tough kind of as well and big. And I can definitely just think of a ton of games when Minnesota's come to the Garden. The amount of times I've watched on Ness and I'm just like, ooh, they're getting scrappy, but it's not enough. I actually kind of like Minnesota. I really like Minnesota. Like if I had to choose a second favorite team, it'd probably be them. Growing up, I did like watching was it Zach Parise, like Marianne Gaborik on those teams. I think Danny Heatley was on those teams as well. But Jason Pominville too. Like there was a they were likable and they were kind of like the underdog. And I always like rooted for that. So I don't really got a gripe against Minnesota either. But fun team to watch, great jerseys, and hopefully they can get over the hump and become a true hockey powerhouse in the National Hockey League. This next one, no brainer. No brainer. Montreal is easily the rival. Growing up, there was a lot of beef between those teams in the early 2010s, but even before that, the history just goes so far back, and it just roots itself so deep where you have to say the Canadiens are. If you're a Bruins fan, I don't think there's any other team that you can dislike more than the Montreal Canadiens, just considering how often the two teams have played each other and how many moments that these teams have butted heads with each other. For me, in recency bias, Thomas Plekanec was annoying. Brendan Gallagher, Max Pacioretty, PK Subban always found a way to score on Tuukka Rask from the point or even on a breakaway. Yeah, there were some real intense moments in my time as a Bruins fan whenever the Canadiens were on the TV screen, and a lot of frustrating times growing up that molded me into not liking the Canadiens. So hopefully this new sort of era of Montreal being like good can kind of create that again. And with the 84 game schedule, hopefully you get Montreal back into the fold of like a real rivalry. What I would love to see is another Bruins Canadiens playoff series, but we haven't really seen the Bruins play Montreal in so long in a meaningful, like a meaningful playoff game. So, but maybe it's building itself back up. But Montreal will always be the number one rival for the Boston Bruins. That's without a doubt. But this next team has definitely seen the Bruins in recent playoff stints. We're going to put Florida in fresh in the mind. And obviously, over the past two, I want to say, yeah, over the past two playoff series before the Bruins missed in 2024-25. And even then, we can go into it a little bit. So Florida is notably the team that has built itself up and was the wild card team that knocked out the 65 win Bruins in 2022-23. Unbelievable. Then the year after, the Bruins make the second round, and it's the same thing. Florida kind of like sent the Bruins into a backspin if you really think about the trajectory of the organization since that 65 win season. Bergeron and Krejci gone after that year. You look at what they did after the Bruins traded Brad Marchand, who was now on the Panthers and a huge integral piece of their top nine. There's a lot to be sour about with the Florida Panthers. They're definitely a team that I would consider fresh in the mind for Bruins fans. I wouldn't put them in like strong rivalries or have their moments because the Bruins used to kick the crap out of Florida. As a kid, like Florida was a cakewalk. So much so that Zdeno Chara spun around like a ballerina and scored once. Like they used to be a cakewalk, but now we've kind of become their cakewalk in a sense. But it's there's some bad blood between the Bruins and Panthers, especially in the regular season, and we should see that continue into 2025-26. Moving on. New Jersey. I have not pegged anyone into this tier yet, but they're gonna be there. They're gonna be there, have their moments. I remember as a kid, New Jersey was definitely like a pretty decent team growing up. There definitely are some moments that I probably can't think of off the top of my head that was like, oh my God, the Devils are so good. But the Bruins have definitely had their moments with the New Jersey Devils, I would say, dating back into the early 2000s before I was born. But even then, in recency bias, I'll think to this. The Devils had Cal Palmieri, known Bruins killer. He definitely would score against us. So that was frustrating. I can't put them in don't really care because I definitely am thinking of some. I there's some moments that I don't think I can think of it at this time, but I think New Jersey does fit into that sort of category. Like there definitely have been some moments where Bruins fans have probably taken a sour taste towards the Devils. So yeah, there's that. This next team also will put themselves in that category. The Philadelphia Flyers have certainly had their moments with the Bruins. If I think the first thing that comes to mind, 2010 when the Bruins were up, I want to say it was 3 games to nothing, and they historically collapsed against the Flyers. The Flyers went on to the Stanley Cup final that same year. So that's definitely something that is in the thorn of the side of Bruins fans. But even then, between the Flyers and the Bruins, David Pastrnak is always a player that kind of, likes to play well against the Flyers. I definitely know there's some bad blood between the Bruins and Philly dating back to the Broad Street Bullies days. That was when guys would really rough it up. I'd peg them and have their moments. The Bruins and Flyers have definitely had those, for sure. But let's move on. Predators, I don't care. Like I don't think about the Nashville Predators as a team that's like, you know, I can't stand them. I kind of like them. I kind of like the team that they got. Like Roman Yossi's pretty good. Forsberg, he's creative as a player. Um, yeah, I don't really care about the Nashville Predators. Sorry, Nashville. But yeah, moving on. Oh, this one. Do we put them in to have their moment? No. If we put Carolina in fresh in the mind, the Islanders are also going to be fresh in the mind because they are. I could not stand the New York Islanders in 2021 because they were the team that knocked off the Bruins from making the Eastern Conference Final, and they advanced. And that was a really tough series for me because I wanted to see the Bruins kind of make a push back into a deep playoff run, and the Islanders prevented that. They were the better team, and they were really frustrating, deep team. I definitely, when I think back on teams that I have a I just have a vendetta against, I just can't stand the New York Islanders, especially when when they beat us back in 2021. That was a really frustrating loss for me. But even before that, like, I don't think the Bruins have beaten the Islanders in a playoff series, and we're going back to the '80s when they like four-peated. So yeah, but now they are still fresh in the mind. I still think about 2021. I'm like, man, Pastrnak with that hat trick. What would have happened after? You know what I mean? So they would dictate as fresh in the mind for me. I definitely think of them that way. Moving on, Ottawa. Ottawa, you've had your moments. 2017, I like. Need I say more? Torched. Eric Carlson and that team torched the Bruins. That was not fun. I definitely didn't like Ottawa when they were beating us in our build up years back towards a Stanley Cup final bid in 2019. They definitely were a team that was frustrating to play against. And even then, this past year, like the Bruins stunk against the Senators. Like they really gave us a run for our money. So, but yeah, we'll see how things go with the new look Ottawa Senators. They definitely look like they have a deep forward core. Although they lost Brady Tkachuk, they got William Eklund who scored that really sick like in the air goal. So I mean, they didn't lose anything in terms of like things done against the Bruins. That's for sure. But yeah, Ottawa's had their moments. Ottawa's had their moments. Yeah, Rangers. Rangers strong. They are a strong rivalry. Original six, and you got to think of like the city thing as well. You always see the Rangers and the Bruins face each other during the Thanksgiving showdown. That's definitely something that they try to put on. They try to put these two teams on national TV as much as they can, and even then, just like the New York thing is definitely, I feel like, a huge thing that dates back between both cities and their sports teams, way before we were born. I bet you the Rangers and the Bruins have definitely had some, some clashes. And if I look behind me, hold on. Yeah, our first Stanley Cup was won against them. I have no recollection of that whatsoever, but I definitely think that's something that kind of like started all. But yeah, New York and Boston, always a fun game to watch between these two teams. And we'll see that first thing when the Bruins open their season at home against the Rangers for the Will Borgen Jonas Korpisalo Bowl. But it's highly unlikely that the Rangers are going to start Jonas Korpisalo on national television. I highly doubt that. But yeah, we'll see how that sort of continues. But Rangers, strong rivalry for sure. Pittsburgh. If this said conference final feuds or deep playoff feuds on that second to last tier, I'd probably put them there. But they've had their moments. They've definitely had their moments. Looking back, there's the black and yellow thing. Like I get Pittsburgh's black and yellow, but um, growing up, when Pittsburgh switched to black and yellow was frustrating for me because they kind of tried to deem themselves as that. I believe as a fan, the Bruins are the black and yellow team. That's what I feel like they identify as, but half the league also plays with red, black, and white as a color trio. And then the other half also just uses blue and white in some capacity. So like I can't really blame them for the copycatting. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, there's definitely been some clashes. 2013 was definitely a notable conference final clash. What else? Matt Cook, that's a huge thing. When he injured Mark Savard, I was devastated when I was a little kid. Mark Savard was one of my favorite players, and I would, as a fan, would never forgive Matt Cook because I feel like the Bruins would have been even more of a dynasty if Mark Savard was okay. But yeah, that's always something you have to bring up when you think about the Pittsburgh Penguins. You know, I definitely think their star pedigree is something to consider as well. What else? What else can I think of? Oh yeah, they also had James Neal. I couldn't stand him. But yeah, Bruins and Pittsburgh are also always a very interesting matchup between the two teams. Even this past year, I definitely can think of a few moments, especially like the 6-5 was it an overtime loss during our playoff push? Was an overtime win? I forget, but I know Zaka scored an important goal in that game, as he always does down the stretch. So yeah, Pittsburgh's had their moments. Let me know if you guys have any more that you can think of with that. But Matt Cook on Mark Savard, ah, that one stings. For little kid Marcus, that one stings. Don't really care is going to be what the Seattle Kraken are in. I don't like when they expanded into the league, I was like, "Oh, cool, like we got a, sick new team in a pretty decent market." They made the playoffs once, so I'm kind of rooting for them to like figure it out, but they're just mid. Like I don't think about the Kraken. Shane Wright would be cool though. I don't know how that looks, but I've talked about before in a previous video. But yeah, Seattle. I don't think about them at all. San Jose, also don't think about them at all. If you're trying to think about the Joe Thornton trade, and if you're older than me and you can remember the Joe Thornton trade, you're probably going to put them in, have their moments. Like if we really want to dictate that, sure. I just don't really think about San Jose that way, especially like growing up. I know I said I would consider other historical aspects into this, but I mean, you know, the Sharks are they're just that Western Conference team on the road trip that offers a good matchup at 11 p.m., which will be the same case early in October. But I don't really hate the Sharks. Like they're kind of fun to watch, especially now with like all their young players. It's honestly annoying because sorry, they're going to be a dynasty. They're going to like if all these draft picks that they have pan out, it's going to be insane. It's going to be insane. They probably will be the villains at some point in the National Hockey League, but against the Bruins, unless like it's a Stanley Cup final thing, there's not much to like really dislike about a team all the way across the country. So I don't know. Plus, a lot of Bostonians, take they like my Macklin Celebrini because of the college hockey that he played over here. So, and I do too. Like he's a good player, but I don't really think about San Jose much. St. Louis. St. Louis. This one stings. This one really like stings. I've always dictated the Bruins as a team that, you know, people I saw a tier list once on Twitter where it was pretty viral. I think it was from an Edmonton Oilers account or something, or it was called like Top Down Hockey. Anyways, they said the Bruins had no suffering, and I disagree because the Bruins have definitely had like their high moments, but if you take if you take into account like all the sort of like painful moments that have happened, you can't say that they haven't suffered. And St. Louis is definitely one of those times as a fan where I was really in the gutter emotionally. I thought 2019 was the year, and it stings to talk about when you think back on all the excitement that the Bruins had throughout that 2019 playoff run. It was so fun. That team was just amazing. I loved Joachim Nordstrom and Coyle and oh my god, Marcus Johansson was on that team too. Chris Wagner, I think, won 7th player award that season. It was just such a fun year. And St. Louis came in and just ruined the party with Gloria. I can't stand the song Gloria anyway. But St. Louis, recent cup final feud, they yeah, that will always live in my head. That'll be rent free in my head. They got a good team though now. They got a pretty decent team now. I can't wait to see what they got. Tampa. Uh um yeah, I'd say fresh in the mind. When you think about Tampa, I put in the category of Florida if you think about those kinds of teams that are over the Bruins that the Bruins have trying to been like or kind of been like second fiddle to, along with like the Panthers. The Bruins are now trying to like not be second fiddle to the Panthers, but that's the case for everybody. Tampa was that team before Florida was, because Tampa really they really built themselves up after that 2015 Cup final loss, and it felt like every time the Bruins faced them in the playoffs, if we're talking from like 2018 to 2021, the Bruins just couldn't beat the Lightning. They could not beat the Lightning, and it was really frustrating. Steven Stamkos also has a huge contribution to this as well, because of, the fact that he's kind of like a Bruins killer. I dictate him as a Bruins killer, like a player who always just found a way to score against us. Um, yeah, Stammer, although one of my favorite players of all time, definitely puts a thorn in the side when you think about the Tampa Bay Lightning if you're a Bruins fan. It's frustrating. It's one of those they're one of those frustrating teams. They're definitely fresh in the mind. Um, yeah, that's probably they're sweet in the middle that way. But yeah, if I'm thinking about Tampa, fresh in the mind, definitely the Bruins can't get over them. Um, so yeah, what else am I thinking of? 2011, we did get him though, but that was probably one of the greatest playoff series I've ever watched in my life, between the Bruins and Tampa in 2011. I was really young, but I recollect a lot of that, especially that game 7. So yeah, they've had their moments, but it's fresh in the mind if you're a Bruins fan, for me at least. This one is certainly strong. Now, for the Bruins fans who would argue that Toronto, you wouldn't really care about them because the Bruins always beat them, I will rebut this. I will rebut this with one thing. Okay. Yes, the Bruins have dominated the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but you have to take into account the original six history between the two teams. And I also want to point out that, yes, while the Bruins have swindled the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Brandon Carlo Fraser Minton trade, going to the first round pick, there's definitely some sour taste in Bruins fans' mouths when you bring up the subject of Gavin McKenna and the Leafs getting the number 1 overall pick. Had there not been a top 10 protection on that draft pick from Toronto, the number 1 overall pick would have been the Bruins, the Bruins selection. And even then, if the lottery had gone in the Bruins' favor, the imagine where we're sitting in talking about, the Bruins right now and their sort of trajectory. You would have probably been able to take a top end right shot defenseman, whether that would have been like a Chase Reed or a Jackson Rudolph, probably would have went anyway. But trying to think of who else was available, like a Ryan Lynn. Like, you could have taken that pick and taken a right shot defenseman that would have been integral for your prospect pool. Or you could have traded it. You could have traded the pick and gotten a huge piece. They still did get JJ Peterka. They still made a move that kind of fit their window, and I liked it, and I liked it at initially. But still, like, that pick could have been used in some way, shape, or form, and now you got to wait for it. So it's definitely still strong. It's definitely still strong with Toronto, for sure. And there's countless moments that the Bruins have had with the Maple Leafs, for sure. Moving on, Utah, I don't care. If we're talking Utah itself, too young. But even then, before that, Arizona, like, they were a cakewalk every time the Bruins went to Arizona before that. Utah, I don't think about at all, like, in terms of hatred. They're probably one of those teams that I would prefer to see move on up. So yeah, Utah definitely gets a thumbs up. I don't care about them, but go you guys. Go you guys. Have fun. Have fun. Build up. Washington. Oh, that siren. That damn go horn with the siren used to annoy me as a kid. I used to get so annoyed when Ovechkin would score bomb. It was just like, uh-oh. And I know Alex Ovechkin has done this to every single NHL team. Every single NHL fan has experienced what it's like to be on the receiving end of an Alex Ovechkin goal. But the Boston Bruins in particular have definitely had their moments with the Washington Capitals. On the back end of an Ovechkin clap bomb that just annoyed you. I think back to 2012 when the Bruins matched up as the defending Stanley Cup champions against Washington, and Washington upset the Bruins. That for me is definitely, unless I'm forgetting something, that's definitely the pinnacle of where I would peg Washington and Bruins and the Boston Bruins relationship. Is there anything else? Yeah, and Tuukka Rask would always see red. Like, if he saw red between Montreal and Washington, there was definitely something going on. But good matchup all the time. One of my least favorite goal horns to be on the receiving end of is definitely between Montreal or Washington. I just can't stand it. Can't stand it. Great teams, though. Great teams that the Bruins have always faced. Oh, and Braden Holtby. Braden Holtby. How could I forget Braden Holtby? Guy was a brick wall against the Bruins at times, man. Brick wall. Vegas, I mean, like their storied success or their immediate success definitely stinks. They took Bruce Cassidy. Um, they took Bruce Cassidy from the Bruins. Like they signed him, but the Bruins kind of fired him. So there's no real reason. It's not like Bruce Cassidy. Like I don't know. Like I'm kind of happy that Bruce Cassidy was able to find a Stanley Cup. I'd put Vegas and don't really care. Um, I mean, like, yeah, the Bruins let Cassie go. That's the only thing I can think of. I can't really think of anything else. And even then, like, it's kind of on the Bruins. That's a whole nother conversation. But Bruce Cassidy was the first name I thought of where it's like, do I put them in to have their moments? But Vegas is too young. But me personally, as an NHL fan, their immediate success gives me an eye roll. Like, ugh, you got to be kidding me. But you know, is what it is. I don't really like care much. I'd like to say at least. So yeah, Winnipeg, don't care as well. I don't really think about them at all. There's nothing I can think of that would make me say, "Oh yeah, screw the Jets." Like I don't. No, they're the Jets. Like they're just a decent team up north that has now become mid. So sorry about that, Winnipeg. But yeah, last but not least, we can end it on a high note. I'm glad we're kind of ending this on a high note because this is the first and only time I've ever seen a Stanley Cup victory. Vancouver goes in recent Cup final feuds, but that 2011 series was intense. Was intense. It definitely got the juices flowing. I used to get so hype, and I still do when I think about this series between the Bruins and the Canucks. Probably one of the greatest Stanley Cup final series we can discuss in recent memory between two teams. Vancouver was Vancouver was something else of a juggernaut team, and I just remember the Bruins coming in as the underdog and how much I disliked Vancouver as things went along. But it was when the Bruins really truly became like the big bad Bruins, like when they really displayed that for the rest of the league to see. I think back to Burrows biting Bergeron's finger, Rome with his hit on Nathan Horton. That was I could not stand Aaron Rome after that. It, yeah, Vancouver. I mean, like they're mid now; they stink. But you know, in terms of a Cup final feud, like yeah, that was a different time, man. It was a great hockey series, and yeah, I did not like those 2011 Vancouver Canucks. But that is the tier list. That's what we have. At initial glance, I kind of like it. I think I did a good job. But let me know what you guys think in terms of how you would have done this, how you would have ranked the tiers. I kind of wanted to make sure it stuck to like on ice play, but there were definitely a few examples where I probably could have like put somebody in some teams and have their moments. I might go through and reconfigure this after the video and I'll just like put the edits up. But that's the tier list. Let me know what you guys think. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider subscribing to the After Further Review show on YouTube, where it's actually on Marcusi, but we'll figure out a YouTube channel in the meantime. Please consider also listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're probably available on it, so go check us out there. Also, find us on Instagram. Follow us at After Further Review Show, where you can find clips. And our content is everywhere with player interviews, podcasts, and so much more fun stuff that me and Pat love doing around the Bruins, the NHL, and beyond. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we hope to see more of you. Bye bye.